any point in time between July and now cut down on public investments. On the contrary, we have only increased it. So the capex between July and now, if you look at the data, has only gone up. So in a way, we were very clear that whilst we were addressing the supply side issues, it was time for us to make sure that the consumption and also investment, because we wanted to boost up demand, had to be kept up. And that's the story.
How has the budget addressed these two big concerns, that that there is the demand side problem, and the economy is investment starved. So how have these twin issues got addressed with your budget?
And that is one of the reasons why I started by saying private investment will do their own whenever they would take their call on it, and we have given them our intention by cutting the corporate tax. We brought it down to a lowest level. So we wanted to tell them, we believe now that you will make decisions with such an attractive tax rate. But from the other side, from the government side, we wanted to make sure the money was going for investment, and that is why the Prime Minister's announcement on Independence Day, Red Fort address, he spoke about 100 lakh crores in the next 5 years. We didn't wait for the 100 lakh crores projects to come. We ourselves spent a lot of time talking to states, talking to different private sector people, and putting together a pipeline of 6,500 projects, some of which are greenfield, some of which are brownfield, but all of which, if only attended to through state governments or through private participation with central government, can make a big difference to the entire environment. One, by creating the assets in the infrastructure sector, and two, by making sure that the cascading effect of that will bring in positive impact on industries like cement, iron and steel and so on, and also give in situ employment opportunity for a lot of people. Now, if that is the way in which we wanted to make sure money was going for investment, I was not just talking off the cuff. One investor facilitation center is being started. Sovereign funds who have all in the last 6 months been contacting us because they see India as a very positive investment destination. They want to come and invest in India. For them, we had to keep the pipeline ready. No point if they reach here and then search for projects. More than that, we've also given them concessions in our fiscal policy. We've given them tax concessions so that if they came and specified, while giving the tax concessions, specified that if they were going to spend it in infrastructure, lock-in period being a certain number of years, 3 years, we will give them the concession. All this has been tied up. So we are not talking today for it to happen some years later. Everything is kept ready. It should all start playing out sooner.
I'll come back to this point a little later. I want to ask you a broader question. Do you see that the economy has kind of bottomed out? We are seeing projections of the GDP rate, GDP growth rate of 6.5%. How do you see the economy, and when do you think it will start reflecting in a turnaround? In the first half or in the second half of this fiscal year, next fiscal year?
Well, I thought some of the data which is being released and the kind of comments which you hear from international observers and also the Indian industry themselves are all very clearly indicating that negativity with which people spoke about India immediately after July budget.
Yes.
They must have had their reasons. I'm not faulting them for it. But the negativity with which they spoke, the sentiment about which they were referring to, have all now gone away. At least I have not heard them speak about it. I can see some of the data which is coming through showing that there is a turnaround. So I have a feeling if we keep this pace of hearing industry, keeping in touch with them and responding to them, one of course watching also at the same time as to what impact all those interventions which we've done have had, I think we will possibly be moving towards a very constructive phase.
Where do you see the green shoots in the economy? The former finance minister today said that 6.5% is not only an astonishing figure, it's also an irresponsible figure being given by the government.
Well, I would have thought that this budget, if anything, has really put in a lot of work to show that we mean every number that we've stated.
Right. So, will the budget really stimulate rural demand? I think, one of the things that everyone was looking forward to in this budget, how will rural demand get stimulated? So, what are some of the specific things you feel will do that?
The fact that after due consideration, nearly 3 lakh crores have been allocated for agriculture and rural development put together. And the various specific schemes which the Prime Minister has been talking about. And the focus on aspirational districts, backward among some of the states which are doing well and backward among those who are not probably doing so well, are chosen, about 112 of them. Looking at building hospitals there, getting 2-tier and 3-tier cities in those aspirational districts also to pick up, bringing in SHGs as a backward linkage for aggregation in rural produce, making sure the coastal fishing villages will have their own FPOs, fish farmer produce organizations, bringing the NABARD and Mudra to the rural areas to give them more of such loans with which the farmers' issues will be addressed, where silos can be built at taluk level. These are things with which we think the rural issues can be meaningfully addressed.
Right. Nirmala ji, why do you think the markets are disappointed with your budget? Have they not understood it in its full sweep? Markets are down, Sensex down 1,000 points, Nifty down 300 points. Were they really looking for a big stimulus, in sectors such as infrastructure, real estate, NBFCs?
100 lakh crore.
That's over
5 years. But yes. I've said the moment there is a requirement, I'm ready to front load it. The first line itself is I'm willing to front load.
So there is a provision in this budget for that?
Pipeline investments numbers have been very clearly put. 22,000 crores have already been given for those 2 companies which are going to do long-term investment in infrastructure funding. Right. So all this is, in any case today, I think to be fair, the stock market was not in full force. They were there, but many of those concerned wings within the stock markets have not all been functional. It is only Monday when they have to, and I am very confident the stock market will understand every aspect of what I have said in this budget and the kind of push that I have given for bond market, for deepening the bond market, for strengthening the bond market, and making sure that India understands that there is one world out there which has still not been exploited fully. These are things which I am sure that the markets will understand and respond by Monday.
So you're hopeful that the bond market will react positively to the budget?
Of course. There's never been this many steps taken for bettering the bond market.
You're also banking a lot on foreign investment. You made it easier for sovereign wealth funds to invest in infrastructure. FPI can invest more in debt now, up from 9% to 15%. What was the thinking behind this?
Only because it is possible now. You already have a number of cases of banks and other such institutions, in fact many NBFCs themselves raising funds from outside. They are doing it because they think the cost of borrowing is far lesser when they do it from outside, and understandably. It is possible for us to be able to encourage many such borrowing from outside and therefore make the Indian savings be available for many others who really cannot go out to borrow. So whilst opening it up, you are making sure that there is credit availability, both from borrowing outside and also from inside. Cost of capital also will come down once you are able to get it from outside.
Right. I will go back to the point you were making earlier about this push to infrastructure. You talked about this 100 lakh crore to be invested over 5 years. Are you confident that this will be done over a 5-year period and that the Prime Minister's dream of a 5 trillion economy would be realized by 2024?
Absolutely, because see, projects and their absorption capacity also doesn't happen within 1 year. They spread their cost. As the project gets completion process, you get more and more resource requirement which goes in. And therefore to spread it over 5 years is not so much from our end saying you don't want to spend now, you want to stagger it. It's more the absorption capacity of the project itself. even they will take their own time to take more and more. Even if funds are available, they can only take a certain level at any point in time.
And the economy will grow in double digits to be able to get there in 5 years, or will we have to push this deadline?
Well, I'm making all the necessary steps to give that stimulus in the economy.
Let me come to the fiscal deficit. You know, the fiscal deficit has slipped yet again to 3.8%. My first and direct question is, will it lead to a downgrade in India's sovereign rating? Is there a potential risk of that?
I don't see that at all, because we've been very responsible about the way in which we have used the forbearance in the FRBM Act. The Act provides for the forbearance of 0.5. We have not crossed that. And the numbers that we've given, different heads, different places, different numbers, are all responsible numbers. I've even made a mention as to why my numbers this time, given the fact that I've used the forbearance, are well within the framework. So I don't see India's ratings coming down because we have breached the fiscal number, or we have in fact we have complied with the framework given to us. And if I don't do that, and if I'm stubborn about the number that I have, even in today's situation, I'm expected to spend more.
Achieve this number. How confident are you of getting through Air India, Concor, Shipping Corporation? Do you think all this will happen in the coming year?
It should happen, shouldn't it? Because I announced something in July budget. To be fair, how quickly does the government machinery move? Between July and February, they've done all the maximum footwork they need to do for reviving the sale of Air India, looking at Concor, looking at others, Shipping Corporation and so on. You've listed it all.
Right.
And in the meanwhile also attending to something totally different from it, the ETF, which is not a disinvestment, but they're looking at the ETF.
Yes.
And through ETF they've shown success as well.
Correct.
For a government department to move on these fronts so quickly, I announced it in July, and I'm conceding that within this financial year I may not get the benefit from it, but yes, it will happen in the
So
next
will you be able to meet your target this year, 1,05,000?
No, that's the point I'm making, right? They have done all the footwork. I don't see it getting done before 31st March, although I did say I want this happening before the end of March. The extent of footwork that they had to do, look at the fresh terms of conditions and so on. So it will move into.
But because of this footwork, next year you'll be able to do 2,10,000 crore. That you're confident of.
That's right.
Okay. The other interesting scheme, that is Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, how much are you planning to mop up because of this? Your earlier scheme for indirect taxes has been a hit. You've been able to garner a substantial amount in just 4 months. If I remember right, about 40,000 crore.
That's right.
Right. So what is your expectation from this?
I have a feeling that people are fed up of litigation and they have been waiting for a scheme. This is not amnesty. I'm very clearly telling them that they have to pay the disputed tax amount. But what we are willing to completely forego is the penalty on it, the interest on it, the interest, say, upper interest on it, and so on, provided they join it before 31st March 2020, giving 2 full months on it.
Right.
And if you miss March 2020, yes, till June you may do it, but that would be on a slightly different rate of some more penalty to be, or some money to be added to it. So I'm very clear, at least from the way in which between July and now, I've been meeting with a lot of people all over the country, in talking with them about taxation, the harassment that they tell me they undergo and so on, that they are looking for a decent option to close this whole chapter. So I guess...
Yeah, the money stuck is huge, I think close to 6
right.
lakh.
Neither they nor government benefits from it.
Right. So you're hopeful to get a big number this
very
year
positive,
itself?
Very positive.
31st March?
I guess so.
Okay. Another question that, even former Finance Minister Arun Jaitley ji had raised last year. It was very nice of you to bring him in today, a very personal touch there. He spoke a lot about, last year he spoke about investigative adventurism. Today you spoke about the same thing as well. You said the tax harassment will not be tolerated at all.
We've come with this charter.
Right.
Taxpayers' charter.
Yes.
Which is getting enshrined in the statutes.
Yes.
We'll probably be the 4th country in the whole world, which USA, Canada, Australia are the only three, as much as I know, who have got a charter.
Right.
So no good for us to go on saying that we trust the taxpayer. We are showing it in action.
Right.
We are putting it into the law.
But from what you say and what is happening on the ground is pretty different. Every other day we hear of tax raids, ED and CBI raids, and this is impacting business sentiment in some sense. What would you say to that?
No, that's exactly the point I'm telling. The intent of the government is not just to go on saying, now we are proving it, that we are enshrining it in the law itself, that taxpayers will have to be given a certain, assurance that we respect them. But one line I would take this opportunity to say. If there is gross evasion, or if there is a very substantial reason to pursue somebody because of money laundering, I can't now tell my agencies to sit back and say, no, it is giving a bad impression. They'll have to keep doing their lawful job. If there is evasion, if there is money laundering, I cannot for the life of me think that I should look the other way and not enforce law. I want to draw that fine distinction between harassment, which should not happen, but pursuing wrongdoers.
Another point, Nirmala ji, related to, it's not related to the budget directly, but we've seen a lot of CAA protests in the country over the last few weeks. You've also seen a lot of international press which is turning against India. Do you think it impacts business sentiment, and will it hamper at some point capital flows into the country?
I don't think, because the data in the last 2-3 months is that the flow is continuing. In fact, many of the sovereign funds have been inquiring with us as to where they can put their money. I've announced some concessions for them. I don't think it's affecting India's image, because we may have started late, but we have very clearly explained that it goes against nobody. And it doesn't question the citizenship of anybody. It is a law to give citizenship and not remove citizenship. And it is something which suited all political parties when they were in power. They gave assurances, but they didn't fulfill. This is not something which we have come to do today without taking the mandate of the people on it. We put it in our manifesto. Many other parties have also put it in their manifesto. We have gone to the public seeking vote inclusive of this point, and we've got the mandate. Are we to do the job or not? So I don't think we have done anything as a surprise.
The other point about, the corporate India leaders sometimes complain about micromanagement at the highest level. In fact, Tata chairman N. Chandrasekaran recently even said, that supervision is good, but suspicion is not.
অর্থমন্ত্রী নির্মলা সীতারামনের পূর্ণাঙ্গ এই সাক্ষাৎকার ফের দেখুন রাতে 10টায়।